And now I can hear chanting. And now I can hear like the classic, whoa, yeah, 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 whoa, yeah, yeah, the Native American Indian chanting. I can hear a medicine drum going boom, 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 boom. And I just start screaming my head off because as I'm seeing this, I'm also like seeing impaled dead people, dead Indians on stakes, on wooden stakes. So I may have, for example, I may have a client who come to me with really, really bad neck problem, really, really terrible neck. Can't, she hasn't been able to turn her neck, to the left-hand side for the past, 9 months.
Welcome to the podcast that guides men to demystify and develop their intuition. I'm your host, Doug Bites. Let's dig into the science and expand your horizons. What if the intuition you've been searching for has been speaking to you since childhood, through nature, through your body, and through the quiet moments you've learned to ignore? My guest today is Kurt Nischel, a man whose connection with intuition began long before he had a name for it. As a child, Kurt felt a deep connection with nature, spending countless hours communicating with trees, animals, rocks, and the subtle energies he sensed all around him. Over the years, life took him on a remarkable journey, from a hyperactive child to a professional skateboarder, an arborist, and eventually through a profound period of personal transformation that challenged everything he thought he knew about himself and the world. Through these experiences, Kurt developed a deeper understanding of the unseen forces that influence our lives and learned how to work with them in practical and meaningful ways. Today, Kurt helps others release old traumas, reconnect with their authentic selves, and find greater harmony and balance in their lives, drawing on the unique wisdom of his elders, his connection to nature, and his own lived experience. He offers a unique perspective on intuition, healing, and the journey of self-discovery. Kurt, welcome to the podcast.
Good morning, Doug. Hello. Thank you for having me on, mate.
My pleasure. And we're finally online on a Zoom call with someone who was on the same time zone.
Yeah.
I do interview a lot of people who are in the US, and So when I say good morning, we're both, you know what I'm talking about. It's not dinner time at night for you.
That's right. It's really happening right now, and we are, yes, on the same plane, so to say. Yeah, cool.
Where the world begins over here on the time zone ahead. I always let the Americans know that, the sun comes up tomorrow and all's good. So, yeah. All right, so we had a talk a week or two ago, and you've had a interesting journey and interesting life, and it's taken you to a lot of places, and
Correct.
your intuition has sort of kicked in there a bit. Something I guess we didn't talk about last week that maybe if you want to briefly talk about it, whether it's relevant or not, I'm not even sure, is your younger years. Like we talked about the last sort of, say, roughly 10 years. If there's anything in those early years that's relevant to where and how intuition or your spiritual self came in, like, if you want to share any of that.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. So I grew up on the Gold Coast in the hinterland, in a small area called Mundarabar. And my mother and father were both European immigrants. They come to Australia, like in the late 60s and 70s. My mother was originally from Czechoslovakia, and my father was from Austria. And so they both come over to Australia just, as traveling, chasing the dream. And they actually both met in up north in Hayman Island. And so they were both working there, and that's where they met and fell in love, etc. And I come into the world on the Gold Coast. And most of my childhood was spent in the bush. Like all my first childhood memories were really just, I vividly remember tall, long grass and just eucalypt forests and it was all just about building cubbies, and for some reason, like I remember back as far as I can remember, and it was always just about building teepees, right? And I just always had this affinity for Native American Indians and the culture, and I had no idea why. It's just something that I really loved. Like it was just a really cool thing to me. And whether we're watching movies like The Village People, and out of all of those people, my favorite one was the Indian with the headdress and all this stuff. And as life progressed and went on, it was really wild because I kept collecting all of these trinkets, like I had these like these necklaces or belt buckles or books or it was just it was wild. And by the time I was like a teenager, I had this shoebox and it was just full of all this Native American Indian paraphernalia. And so my childhood was really all about movement. I was just very, very active always. If I wasn't climbing up trees, swinging around in trees, I was either skateboarding. Like I got my first skateboard when I was 7 years old, or I would be riding BMX bikes. For me, it was always just about speed. It was always just how fast can I go? Like how fast can I push this? And it was just a sense of just pure awe, that feeling of just going fast and just testing myself always, and that didn't stop. That didn't stop until I had children, when I was 42 years of age. So I spent my whole life, really just either surfing, skateboarding, snowboarding, and then as an arborist, I started climbing trees when I was 21, and it took me around the world. I worked all throughout Australia as a climbing arborist, and then I worked all throughout Europe as a climbing arborist for a further 8 years. And
So just to clarify that for people listening, you're like a tree lopper, like you're climbing the tree to trim it down or potentially bring the whole thing down or whatever professionally. Yeah.
Correct. And whether you call it tree lopper or arborist is the correct term. And
Yes.
I did all the studies, and I actually am an AQF level 5 arborist, which is an arborist that I can write reports and statutory declarations and lawful reports for trees. So I've had a very deep connection with nature through trees for my whole life. I really, it's been something that's, even in the days when I was an arborist and I was young and learning in my 20s, on the weekends I'd take my gear home and I'd just try and find the biggest trees that I could and just climb to the top and just be and just sit with trees always. So it was kind of I didn't realize it when you know energy and things that were unexplainable to me and not of these five senses. It kind of it all made sense later that when I started communicating with trees. And that can be kind of a bit of a controversial thing for people to understand, and people are sort of like, what do you mean? You talk to trees? And it's sort of like, well, yeah, that's kind of how everything started for me, because I was experiencing some really severe grief through the death of my father, and this is going back around 10 years ago. And I didn't actually understand what was happening. And as most people that have been through grief or are going through it. It's the most difficult emotion for human beings to navigate. It's very, very challenging. And as it was, I very much isolated myself, and I would find solace through placing my hands on trees. And very, very big old growth trees, deep in national parks. And whenever I would do this, I would really just slip into an altered state, and I would just start communicating to. At the time, I didn't actually understand what it was, but there was a very deep and old sort of cryptic voice that was communicating to me. And at the time, I was like thinking, wow, this is pretty wild. I didn't know, but I'm like, am I talking to these trees? Like, is it my mind and communicating with the energy of these trees? And so, a long story cut short, it's sort of, after about 3 years of extensive, inner research and meditation, breath work, and all these esoteric, things that I was practicing, I had this really, really
Were you
profound.
practicing those to try and, yeah. So,
Yeah.
Kurt, sorry, were you practicing those things to try and work out what your connection with the trees were, or were you already practicing them and then the connection with the tree came?
Yeah, well, like I said, when my father passed away, I just had this. It was a very very different time of my life, because, as I said, up until the age of 42, I had just been going 100 kilometers an hour, and just always, it was always just about going fast. And then at this point in time, I'd met the girl of my dreams, and we'd got married, we'd built a house, we'd had 2 children, and then suddenly my father had passed away. Everything just stopped, and I stopped and slowed right down, and it was the first time that I really sort of went inside, like, I guess, and I switched off, all media. I stopped listening to the news or the radio or TV or the internet, and I just started reading books about indigenous cultures and energy and holistic ways of being. And I didn't know why. I just had this feeling, and I guess we can relate that to this intuitive feeling or knowing that there was something else that I had to find, but I didn't know what it was. And so every day I would just further search and search through podcasts, through books, and I come to this point where I had this just very extensive morning practice, and it was really like I would wake up pre-dawn, and I would meditate, do breath work, run the ice baths, run the sauna, do urine therapy, use essential oils for different heightening senses, and I basically overdosed on everything and anything that I could find that had to do with holistic health and well-being. And it got to the point where, like, because of that whole situation of just being so physically, orientated through my free time or my work time. So, and then all of a sudden just going to the opposite scale of the other end of the spectrum. And by this time I was a consulting arborist. I was no longer a climbing arborist, and things just rapidly changed for me. And so, yeah, I was doing all this inner work and daily routines, and then my wife said to me, "Oh, you need to just take some time away. We had, our two little kids were around about one and two type thing. And so she's like, pack all your boards and in the car and go and have some time away for yourself. And I was like, oh, thank you. Beautiful. So I went down south and headed down New South Wales. And I was actually close to Coffs Harbour, and I went into the Dorrigo Range, and I didn't do any surfing, any skateboarding, none of that stuff. I just went looking for trees, and I did nothing I had planned. It just happened, and lo and behold, I just found this monster tree, like 900-year-old Lophostomen convertus, which is a brush box, and I just had this overwhelming, all of these emotions and all this energy just completely it all just come pouring out of me. And, it was this exponential grief that I was just letting go of all this energy. And as I was, doing this in the forest and I'd found this tree, it's like the tree became kind of like my teacher. And the tree had like a girth or a diameter of kind of like 5 or 6 meters. It was huge, absolutely massive, and it was actually hollow in the center, and I could stand inside it, and it was just amazing. And so every day for a year, I would meditate on that day of just walking, finding that tree, communicating to the tree. And after 12 months went by, I went back and visited the tree again. And it was just profound. It was really like the tree had become my teacher or guru type thing, And it was always like this really deep voice that was kind of speaking to me, and it was kind of a bit wild because I would be out and about, on my day-to-day, doing my job and stuff, and I'm always dealing with trees, and I touch other trees, yet that same old voice would be there, and I'm like, I don't get it. It didn't make sense, And anyway, so on this particular time of visiting the tree down there in the Dorrigo Forest, it was my birthday, and I'm like, right, I'm going to go and see a clairvoyant. I'd never done anything like this before in my life, and my wife had grown up with this sort of stuff, and she's like, yeah, it's a great idea. It'll be really interesting for you. And so anyway, I went and saw this clairvoyant in a small town called Bellingen, and she just started telling me all this stuff about me, my family, my children, about past experiences that I had, and I was just gobsmacked. I was just like, how can you know all of this stuff? You never met me, you don't know anything about me, yet she's telling me about items in my house that I had built, and that I'm that I have a very, very strong connection with timber and all. And it was just wild, And she's like, oh, I talk to the angels. And I'm just kind of like, back then I was still like, I had no idea about spirit and what was actually happening, And so anyway, she just continued and told me all this stuff, blew my mind to pieces. And it was like, everything changed. It was just sort of like, I just all of a sudden was just like, this stuff's actually real. And it really just changed. That was kind of like the catalyst. And so anyway, I jumped in my car, and I knew I had a 3.5 hour drive from Bellingen back to the Gold Coast. And I switched on some really really mellow kind of like handpan, nice meditative type of music. And just before I left, I wrote down in bullet point form all of the things that the clairvoyant had told me, And I sent a message to my wife. I'll see you in 3.5 hours. I'm on my way home. So I start driving the car, and I'm driving my old 95 Toyota 4Runner on the highway, doing 100 k's an hour, and it vibrates, and all these other cars are shooting past me doing 110, 120, and I fully know I'm driving my car. Then all of a sudden, I just start having just like a daydream, you know. It was just weird. I just sort of start thinking about this house, and it just become really vivid, and I was just like, well, this is kind of cool. Like, yeah, I just built a house, and I'm like, this is kind of like a house that I'd love to build. You know, this is something that I'd be really interested in. So let's check it out. You know, let's just go with it. And then after 5 or 10 minutes, I was just there. It was just like I was just inside this house, just walking around in a house. You know, looking at how the floor was built, how the roof was built, the fixtures, the paintings on the wall. I was fully aware that I was driving my car, yet it was like awareness was split in two. And it's still to this day very unexplainable, but it was like I was in another dimension, yet my conscious mind was still driving my vehicle and aware of what was going on. And as I'm in the house, I'm walking around and walk to the kitchen of this home, and this beautiful lady like walks up to in the kitchen, and she's old, you know, like maybe 60s or something like this, and she's very familiar, and I'm like just looking at her, and she's smiling, and I'm like, what's going on, you know? Like, look down at her feet, and she's got this toe ring that's identical to my wife's, and I'm just like, at that moment, I was like, oh my goodness, this is my wife, but she's, you know, 35 years into the future. And I'm just like, just thinking, just like, what is going on here? It was just profound, you know, like, you know, so then I kind of, I walked outside and looked at all this other stuff outside of the home. Like, you know, there's all these water tanks and a freshwater pond with a slide and a sailing boat that was sort of all packed up with a blue tarpaulin over it, and come inside again, and she's still there. But now there's this older guy there, and he's like got a beard and bald and got his hair like tied slicked back. And I'm like, who's this guy? Like, he's familiar too, but you know, like, I can't work this out, you know. And at the time, I'm like, is it my wife's father, or is it me? I just couldn't work it out, you know. These are like older people, and they're like smiling at me, sort of, you know, like it's really wild. And then all of a sudden, sort of like the music stopped, and I come to, and I'm like, oh, whoa. So, okay, like, I know, you know, I'm driving. I'm sort of like, well, I'm at Ballina, or I've been driving for, you know, like an hour and a half or whatever it was. And the time had gone so fast. Like it was like an hour and a half had just gone like in 5 minutes or something like this. It was just absolutely profound. And the music started again. The next track started playing, and again another very, you know, sort of just monotonous drumming and handpan type music. And I was just in there again. It was just completely just like all of a sudden I'm out, and then boom, I'm just straight back in there. And it's, you know, the sun's setting at this point in time, and then as I'm in this other dimension, wherever I am, I walk outside of the home, and there's this massive bonfire. I'm like, okay, this is interesting. So I just sort of sat down, you know, as you do, beautiful fire, and just staring into the fire. And as I'm staring into the fire, to the left-hand side just walks up this beautiful Native American Indian woman, probably in her mid-20s. And she is just gorgeous, drop-dead gorgeous, you know, and has got all the buckskin on, and the feathers in the hair, and the full do. And I'm just like, wow, like what is this, you know? And she just looks at me and just sort of just waves, you know, like this. And then another one comes up on the other side, and it's a male. And he has a tomahawk, and he just kind of like really strong, same thing, all with a get up as a tomahawk, and he just starts dancing around in a circle. And I'm just like, by this time, I'm just like thinking, this is actually kind of, I'm feeling uneasy. This is a bit sort of scary type thing, and I don't know actually what's going on. And I'm like, I remember thinking, actually, I want this to stop. And I don't know actually what's happening right here, right now, And anyway, now as I look forward again, she's on this side, he's on this side, and now straight out of the middle of the fire is coming this really, really old man's face. And I'm talking like, 70s, 80s, grey hair, big, long grey plaits, hardly has his eyes open, and his face just starts coming in and out of the fire. And I'm just like, this is too much. And this feels like, like an LSD trip that I just can't get off of. And I just switched the music off, wound the windows down, stuck my head out the window, and just breathed. And I'm just like, you got this, Kurt. I haven't taken any drugs, any alcohol, done nothing for 3 years. All I've been doing is meditating. Like, I'm good. I've got this, right? Recalibrate, Wind the window back up, and they're all still there. And I'm looking straight ahead. She's there, he's there, old guy's there, and the music's off, and now I can hear chanting. And now I can hear like the classic, well, yeah, 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 well, yeah, yeah, the Native American Indian chanting. I can hear a medicine drum going boom, 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 boom. And I just start screaming my head off because as I'm seeing this, I'm also like seeing impaled dead people, dead Indians on stakes, on wooden stakes. And as I'm seeing this, I'm feeling like somebody has just gotten a wooden stake and driven it through my body and it's coming out the side of my neck. And I'm just screaming my head off. I'm like, I'm pulling off the side of the road, and I pull into a rest stop at Yelgan, just outside of Byron Bay. Got out of my car, saw a lady who had a Winnebago and just went out to chat with her and was just like, hey, beautiful Winnebago, love it. Tell us all about it. And I just got my mind out of wherever I was. And 15 minutes later, I got in the car and I was broken. I was just a broken man. I had no idea what had just happened. And I just started bawling my eyes out, all these emotions, just hectic, just coming out of me. And I just had no idea what I had just experienced. And I drove really, really slow from there to get back home to the Gold Coast, and just broke down as soon as I got there. Told my wife everything that had happened. And for 4 days after that experience, I just could not get back to baseline. I just could not get back to normal life type thing.
Do you think that like you were saying earlier, I'm trying to remember the word you used, you'd almost like overdosed on all of these different modalities, cold plunge, meditation, like on and on and on and on and on. I'm not picking on any of them. Do you think that you'd got yourself so extreme with them that you were now picking up these other frequencies that most of us rarely pick up? Is that the connection here?
It felt like an initiation. It felt like, because all along as I was doing all these things, they felt so familiar to me. It all like, and I would read books about things and I'm like, I know this. I don't know how I know this, but I understand this and I know this. And really complex things about mathematics and geometry and stuff. And I'm just like, I don't know how, but I somehow know this, And
But then your grief with your father passing sort of took it did something to your perception of realms and connected you somewhere maybe.
It did. It cracked me open. It just cracked me. It cracked me open with what is reality, perceiving, what it is. However, as this had happened and it unfolded, and I'm come back home after this experience, I'm trying to get back to baseline, just back to normal, sleeping, eating, and dealing with my wife and my children. And I'm just getting all this information about, again, from this deep old voice, from things that hadn't happened yet. Like and would always call me boy. And it would be like, boy, ring, Karen. Karen's son broke foot. Boy, need to help Karen's son. And I'm like, I don't understand any of this, but I've got to go with it because that's all I could do is just follow it, And if I follow my intuition, it felt right to just do whatever it was, that I was telling me. And so I'd ring Karen, who is, like a relative of my wife, and I'd say, I know this sounds really strange, but did your son just hurt his ankle or something? And she's like, what? How did you know? He just broke his ankle. We just got back from the hospital or what? And I'm just like, she's like, how do you know that? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. I've got all this wild stuff going on, but I'm trying to work it out, and it just, for these 4 days, it just kept happening. 1, 2, 3, all these different things. And it just got to the point where, like, I said to my wife, it's just, I can't physically handle this. It's too much. It's like, I didn't understand where the information was coming from, and it was just too much. And so, we decided, okay, I'll call my GP, my doctor, who's a very good, friend of mine, Dr. Brett Penwan, who I went to school with. I called him and I said, mate, I just experienced this and I have no idea what's going on. I'm getting all this information. It's like a precognition thing, and I don't know what to do. And he just like, book yourself into the mental health unit, bro. Just go and go to the hospital and just have time out. I'm like, okay. So we packed my bag, and that was what we were doing. We were off to the hospital, and just before we went to the hospital, I'd been collecting all of these things in nature, and I just started doing all these weird things, like unexplainable. Just like I made my wife like stop at a creek, and I was like burning these flowers, and I don't know, doing some weird and crazy stuff, and waving sticks around. It was just all just became really bizarre, and I was starting to see like crescent moons in rocks, and just it was very, very difficult to navigate. And as soon as we got to the hospital, I basically went into a catatonic state. And they put me in a wheelchair, and it was like the old voice is just like, just breathe, boy, just breathe. And I just meditated, and I just went into like this another, again, I just went into like an altered state, and it was like I guess it was almost like an out of body experience where I was just off, and I was just seeing all these lights and just somewhere else type thing. And after a few hours, I was in the emergency area, and I was now like laying in a bed, and it was just like voice in the head was like, run, boy, run now, boy, need to go home, like this type thing. I'm like, okay. So I sat up and I can't remember whatever it was I had on me, and I took it off, and then I just went to leave the hospital, and 2 big security guards just jumped on me, held me down, put me in bed. They injected me with something, and good night. No, I was out. And I was in the psych ward there in Robina Hospital for 12 days. And I'm very grateful because, they didn't so much as give me answers to what had happened and why I was continually hearing, a medicine drum, and seeing this old Native American Indian. They couldn't give me any reasons why I was hallucinating and seeing this in my mind. However, they, got me back to a normal eating pattern, sleeping pattern. And, it was a battle between the psychologist and the physiologist, like to work out whether, I'd been taking any drugs or taking magic mushrooms or, been bitten by snakes or whatever it was. And, after 12 days, they were sort of like, send me on my way with a piece of paper that said heightened state of awareness from being alone in nature, and and it was, I kind of didn't realize as I was there, but after sort of 6 days, I was sort of like, my wife sort of said to me, like, if you keep talking about, seeing all this stuff and this old Indian, you're never going to get out of here. And it was just like a dawn on me. Oh, right, okay, I've got to play this game to get out of the hospital, and I did, and I was broken. I was just completely broken still, and it took a long time. It took probably about 4 months later, and I ended up. It's a long story, but I ended up at an acupuncturist, a friend of mine, and I had all this really full on pain going on in my wrists, and I thought, oh, I'll just go get some acupuncture, and all along, this 4 month time, I was going to work, but I just wasn't right. I just every day, it just kept looping. Who are these people? What the hell happened to me? And I kept researching and just I couldn't really find answers. I mean, the most things that made sense were near death experiences or out of body experiences, but I just couldn't get any answers. And I just felt very, very alone. It was very, very difficult because whenever I talked to anybody about things that I'd be experiencing, I kind of, especially, because I was working for local government, and it's like the moment I talk about, esoteric or holistic things, I'd just get shunned and sort of like, called a word.
There's not too many people you would come across who would relate to, or, oh, my brother had that last week.
Yeah.
No.
And so it was very, very difficult. And until I ended up at a wonderful practitioner, Ryan Llewellyn's an acupuncturist and TCM, traditional Chinese medicine practitioner. And, and I told him everything what's going on, and I've got all this pain in my wrists and that. And he's like, okay. And I sort of already told him, like what was happening. I thought I was just going there for some acupuncture, And he's like, we're not going to do acupuncture today, mate. We're going to do something a little bit different to that. I'm like, okay. And just as before we're about to do the session, I go to the toilet as you always do, and I'm sitting in the toilet, and again I'm getting this old voice in my head, and it's like, boy must heal healer before healer heal boy. Just sitting there, I'm sitting in the toilet going, this can't be happening. Like, what is this? And it's like the voice is like, boy align 7 chakras of healer. I'm just like, I'm just sitting in the toilet. This can't be happening. I just got no idea what this means. So I come back out and, and I say to the guy, Ryan, I said, mate, I'm getting all this information that I've got to align your 7 chakras before you do whatever it is that you're going to do to me. He just sort of looked at me and he sort of looked up. He goes, yeah, okay. Spirit thinks that's a good idea. And I'm just like, what? I'm just like, I got no idea what I'm doing. I have no idea what this means. And he just looked at me and he just goes, just go with it, brother. Just follow your intuition. Just go with it. So I just took a deep breath and just listened and just let it guide me. And I moved its table around. I made this table like face the sun in a different direction to what it was facing. I got him on the table. I was playing around with pendulums. I had this pendulum, biogeometry pendulum. And anyway, I just ran the pendulum over his first started on the root chakra. As it's going around the root chakra, I'm seeing this big orb of red light, and I'm just saying this affirmation over and over in my mind. It's just what I would always say when I meditated. Um, just just repeated the same affirmation, over and over, and just did it on every chakra. And the pendulum would spin one way, then spin the other way, and it sort of I'm done and get to the top, and then I sit down, and he sits up off the table and looks at me and he goes, "Bro, you've been doing this a long time, man." And I looked at him, I was going, I got no idea what I just did or what I'm doing. And as I said that to him like this, I'm like, all the pain is gone. I was like, I had like 8 out of 10 pain, like someone was driving nails through my wrists, and now it's gone because I did something to you. And he just goes, "Your turn, mate. Get on the table now." I'm like, I was, I just, I was, at this point, I'm just like, I was like, completely just like so bewildered. I laid on the table and he sort of said a few things to me, looked me in the eyes and, sort of said, permission to work with you on all levels and all dimensions. And I said yes and made the agreement. And then he raised my arm up and he started holding my arm, and started like pulsing, like just feeling this little pulse in my arm. And he's like, felt like I had my eyes closed, and it felt like he's like talking to my arm. And I'm like, what is this? What is this guy doing? Like, what is happening here? And every second word he said was spirit. And lo and behold, after 5 or 10 minutes, I'm just in this complete altered state in another dimension. And I'm like sitting in a teepee, and I'm like this young boy sitting in the teepee, and there's these 3 familiar people with me. The old guy whose face was coming in and out of the fire, the beautiful lady, and the beautiful man. And they felt like they were my parents, and this was my family. And I'm sitting there, they're cooking around the fire in a teepee. I'm looking up at all of this beautiful paintings and geometry inside of this teepee. And then all of a sudden, lo and behold, there's all this massive ruckus, and the whole thing is just smashed to pieces. And we are all slaughtered and killed by American army. And not only are we killed, made a complete mockery of and tortured. And of course, these big wooden stakes driven through our anus and for me come out the side of my neck. And I experienced the whole thing like I was there, and I was screaming on the table, screaming my head off in pain. Few clicks of the fingers, boom, 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 boom. If you didn't want that to happen, how would you, or he said a few other things, if you didn't want that to ever to happen, how would you like that to be reset? Take a deep breath in, and I, imagined I was walking in a field of beautiful flowers in my hand, picking flowers with a young, beautiful girl, smelling the flowers. And, how does it make you feel? Oh, I feel amazing. I feel so happy and relaxed, and be there, see it, feel it, lock it in. Like it was all gone, like it had never, ever happened. And we worked on 1, 2, 3, all these different scenarios were all in the past. They were all down a different timeline of my past lives. And it took about an hour and a half or whatever it was. I sat up off the table, and I felt about half the weight of what I normally feel. And I just said, mate, what the hell did you just do to me? I need to learn whatever it is that you just did. And he's like, oh, that's simple, mate. You can go see an Indigenous man that I learned this from. It's called Dreamtime Healing. He lives in Upper Coomera. His name's Steve Richards. I'll give you his number. And that it was just the most profound thing I'd ever experienced, in my life.
Right.
And so I did it, and I, mustered up the money, and I went and learnt this Dreamtime Healing, and it was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. 7 days intense, and you learn every day. As you're learning, you're also clearing all of your past traumas from this life, from past life, from stuff that you've inherited from your parents or grandparents or whatever it is, or having other energies or entities or animal spirits or human spirits trapped in your field. All this stuff, just clearing all this energy as we're learning. And I went back and I did that training 4 times in 3 years. And as well as doing that training, I also learned dowsing and vibrational radiesthesia through another brilliant teacher, Heinz Guger. He's on the Sunshine Coast, just a Swiss man, beautiful teacher. And I've done advanced training with him, with dowsing, and all to do with clearing energy on land, in homes, within people, animals as well. And as all this stuff was all unraveling over the 3 years, I also found another beautiful teacher, Reese Wynn Davies, who's taught me also how to do psychic mediumship and basically be in the middle, of departed ones or spirits on the other side, and communicate any information that's needed or wanted for their loved ones, And so
you've really lived it, haven't you?
yeah, it was kind of it just was from 0 to 100 in a very, very, very short amount of time. And it's funny, like, you said, so what was your, your childhood like? Well, when I was a kid, those childhood memories, I was hanging out with those, people. I was hanging out with those ancestors, because that's all spirits are. Is they're just ancestors, and they're just in our field, or within us all the time.
Yeah.
And those memories that I have of as a child when I'm 3 and 4, they're as vivid as any memory I have, and I would always be with them playing bow and arrows, and so
yeah, it's a great message, because it's quite different to other people I have on, but I think it's very relatable, because there's definitely going to be men, potentially women too, listen, not probably tens of millions of them, but some will listen, and they will have something very much that they can relate to that's happened to them, that's happened to you, and they can see out the other side. And it's funny, you were saying, like, you were always like ADHD, like full on into it, like go 100 miles an hour all the time, and then you started to slow down.
Yeah.
But then once it all started ramping back up again, it was speeding. You spent the 3 or 4 years doing all these courses and learning, and it sounds like 100 mile an hour again, back into it again, like to stabilize and take full advantage of what you've learned, what you've experienced, so that you can help others. Because there's not millions of people out there within an hour drive of where we live who have gone through what you've gone through, but there is plenty who have had something similar, who need help, because there's not millions of people out there offering this help that you've got. So I think it's wonderful that now you've had the experience, that you're allowing yourself to be available to help people,
Yeah.
and not people who've just had this experience, but people who want to know something about a previous life or however, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. And, at the end of the day, the biggest lesson, that I have learned through all of this holistic teaching and learning is balance is key, and when I was exploring all of these modalities and all of this stuff, I was so far out of balance. I was so off with the fairies and in spiritual realms for such a long time. However, it was necessary for me to go through that initiation, so to say. But now looking back on that, it's just so important for anyone who is experiencing this sort of stuff as well to be grounded, because it's not a nice thing to end up in the psychiatric ward in a hospital at all, and to completely lose touch with reality and not know what is your thoughts, because after all, the key to it all is to understand the mind, and how the mind actually operates and works. Because without mind, we cannot perceive any of this stuff, And so I think this is what it's been, is just a very, very steep and abrupt learning curve to understand what that is. And it's why I'm so passionate about helping people and to clear their dimensions of time, which is basically what they are. It's a point in time, and it's in emotion, is what it is. So whenever I'll be doing my work, or I'll always find the age and when it is in this lifetime first, and there'll be an emotion that will be attached. I'll find those two, and then all the magic basically unravels from those things. And it's a very interesting thing working in this area, because as any industry, it's a very, very big and almost oversaturated market, and everyone's basically talking about the same things, but everyone just has different language for it. You know what I mean? And I tend to think that there is a very easy way to put it, that there's two sides to energy. It's either beneficial energy or it's detrimental energy. And when there's detrimental energy, and that encompasses, whether it's emotions, interdimensional interference, human spirits, animal spirits, past lives, intergenerational trauma, it's not serving you, And if your awareness keeps getting pulled to things that you don't know, what you cannot explain, or you don't know why it is you're in repeat patterns or cycles in your life, then it's more than likely there's a dimension that's you haven't dealt with, and once we deal with these dimensions of time in this life, in the past life, people have just profound shift and changes in their life, and they can be present, in this moment, and actually live their life the way they're supposed to.
So I guess they can live their life in more balance when they're when those things that have been bothering them so much are now sorted out or put into perspective, or there's new knowledge gained of what's happening there.
That's correct.
You're able to feel more balanced and live more balanced. Yeah,
that's correct. And and these are not just mental emotional problems, because we have to understand that all these things that we experience, like say we have physical problems, they start first in the invisible realms or in in the other dimensions, like, so I may have, for example, I may have a client who comes to me with really, really bad neck problem, really, really terrible neck. Can't, she hasn't been able to turn her neck to the left-hand side for the past 9 months. And I say, okay, that's interesting. Let's look at that. Let's look at, we'll just see where spirit takes us and what the root cause of that problem is. Okay, because we're all accustomed to, it's a neck pain. Oh, I need to go and see, an osteopath or a chiropractor, and get that thing right fixed there. But this is a different approach, with a holistic approach. As we all know, we look at things through mind, body, spirit, and soul, And so we with that particular woman, we look through, we look to the age first, okay, and it was, probably at around the age of 10 years old or something like this. It was an early childhood thing, and the emotion was fear, And so 10 years old, fear, and okay, and I did my work, and we regressed her back to that point in time in this life. It's like, so where are you right now? What's happening? It's like, oh, I'm in a cupboard. Okay, so why are you in the cupboard? Oh, I'm really scared, and my mama and my dad are they're gone away, and I'm with some people, and I don't know these people, and I'm really scared. I don't know what to do. It's like, okay, cool, no worries. So, all right, we found the point in time. We found the emotion. I want you to experience that fear and that pain right now. I want you to be there right now, okay? And I want you to gather up all those emotions, and I want you to blow them all off your timeline. I want you to simply just physically release them all out. We're going to get rid of all those thoughts, all those feelings, and all those emotions now, okay? We get rid of those. And now, if you had to come back and relive that moment over again as a little 10-year-old girl, how would you change that moment? Oh, I'd be with my mum and dad, and yeah, I'm sliding down a slippery slide in a park, and oh, it's a wonderful time. Unreal. How does that make you feel? Oh, I feel so happy. I feel so joyful, and I feel so loved by my mum and my dad. Good. Be there, see it, feel it. Lock it in, take a deep breath, activate it. And a few other things, and, clear some interdimensional interference that may be associated with that. And more times than none, that would then go to another lifetime or a genetic hereditary issue. Woman sits up off it, sits up off the table, and it's like, oh wow, that was really powerful. Sort of, my neck feels very good. Yeah, cool. So just drink lots and lots of water for 48 hours. We are made of water. Keep yourself really well hydrated. Drink lots of highly electrical food like fruits and really good nourishing food. And sure enough, I speak to the lady a week later. It's like, Kurt, it's remarkable. It's a miracle. I can move my head left. I can move my neck left and right. Yeah, because you've let go of that energy and those emotions that you had trapped in your body. And just people having that understanding and that realization. And I tend to like to use graphics and diagrams to explain the healing, the method and the situation. And when I feel when people can see an actual, it's a very simple 2-dimensional graphic of what happens, they can integrate it, and because your conscious mind is constantly trying to logically work out what's happened. but it can't, because these are higher, these are subconscious mind or superconscious mind when we're dealing with spirit. And your conscious mind, seeing, seeing, tasting, hearing, smelling, and touching, like the five senses, it doesn't deal with these other dimensions, Yeah.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. Yeah, really good info. Thank you for that, mate.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, before we wind up, is there, like, I'll put your contact details and stuff in the show notes so people can find your website. If you want to mention your website, that's fine, but it will be in the show notes so people can click on it in there. But is there anything that we haven't talked about that you think, like, oh, I really need to mention this before we go? Is there anything else?
Yeah, I think one of the main things in this day and age for a lot of people and men to understand is that you need to learn how to step into your center, because everyone has the ability to spontaneously heal themselves, you know. It's obviously a lot easier when you have a practitioner or a facilitator or a therapist to guide you, but we can all do it ourselves, and you know having a regular practice. I'm very much a big fan of having a regular morning practice, and now it doesn't have to be this big, long 1 hour meditation and all this stuff. Like I take 16 minutes, and I teach people how to do this practice. It's very simple. And it has, mind, it addresses everything to do with mind, body, spirit, and soul. And when we practice the same thing each and every day, you're developing willpower, and having the willpower to keep your awareness centered, in the present moment is the key. It's the key to all of this work. And, in this day and age, more than ever, we have so much easy access to so much information that, we're all human beings we're just gluttons for information. And we have to keep it simple. I feel it's very, very crucial with you're just using very simple visualization, breathing techniques, and positive affirmations, and all this stuff. Like I teach this stuff to people. I run these 28-day challenges for people. It can be very, very difficult for people because you're basically unlearning everything that you think you know about yourself. And this is kind of what it's all about, is just to really, really come back into yourself and into your center and truly understand who you are and what you are as a human being. Because everything that you need to be happy, healthy, and strong, it's all intrinsically inside of you, and it's in nature. You just have to find it.
Yeah. Beautiful, beautiful. Thanks for that. All right. So, yeah, I would recommend to people listening to click on Kurt's website, have a look at his offerings and things he's got there, some explanations, different things he does. And there's more on there than what you've talked about. There's other things there's all sorts of things on there. It's very much worth a look. So thanks for that, mate. And we'll probably get you on again another day and talk about, because I know there's plenty of other things to talk about. So but that was a taste of Kurt.
Yes, it's very. I mean, metaphysics is a very, very broad ranging topic, but yeah, maybe next time we can just explore the mind. I think the big one for people to understand is the difference between awareness and the mind. And most people, or a lot of us, we think that we are our mind, but we are awareness moving within the mind. When you can grasp that concept and really understand it, it can have, profound impacts on people. Yeah.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks, mate.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me on, Doug.
My pleasure. Well, we're at the end of another thought-provoking episode. Remember to subscribe so you'll be alerted to new episodes. I want to say thank you to the men who are joining me on this journey of intuitive development. I truly hope our time together has expanded your reality and reinforced trust in your ever-reliable gut feeling. Embrace your intuition. It will not lead you astray. Until next time, stay tuned, stay curious, and trust your gut.